Coming in at a number 10 spot, we have the elevator game. The elevator game is a mysterious and potentially dangerous ritual that is said to bring you to another world. This game has its origins in Japan and is played by entering an elevator in a public building with at least 10 floors. The player must press specific buttons in a specific order without anyone entering or even leaving the elevator in order to reach this other world. In the other world, electronics do not work, the lights are off, and all that can be seen from the windows is a red cross in the distance. To return back to the original world, the players must repeat the sequence of button presses and be very vigilant of their surroundings. The player must be careful not to look at the woman who enters the elevator on the 5th floor, as she is not human. If someone enters or even leaves the elevator during the ritual, the players must start over. And you must be wondering what the specific ritual is, but if you guys actually want to know about that, search it up, because I'm not going to say it for you guys because I don't want you guys doing this. Because for those who have played, it is said that if they faint or lose consciousness during the ritual, they may wake up in their own home. But they must be careful to examine their surroundings, as it may not be the same home they left. It is important to not attempt this ritual too many times as well, as it can lead to an accidental slipping between both worlds. And it's also worth mentioning that if the woman does not enter the elevator or the players do not reach the 10th floor, they should immediately return to the 1st floor and completely end the game. At a number 9 spot, we have the Rokurokubi, the long-necked demon. The legend of the Rokurokubi is a supernatural creature from Japanese mythology that originated during the Edo period, which is 1603 to 1867. The Rokurokubi is a beautiful woman by day, but at night she undergoes a metamorphosis where her neck extends and she begins to hunt. Some versions of this legend says that this creature can be recognized by small white marks on their neck, or even by the way they sleep with their head far from their body. But in reality, when I see photos of this, all I can think is, if they got a long neck, they're probably this creature. According to folklore, however, there are different explanations for the origin of this creature. Some believe they were once Buddhists who broke the religion's principles and were then cursed as punishment, while other people see the transformation as a supernatural expression of the person's desires. There are also legends that suggest they are Oni, which are these Japanese demons seeking revenge or even simply just playing tricks on humans. And it's also worth mentioning that this creature comes in many different forms, with female ones attacking men and male ones attacking women. The Nukekubi is one of the most dangerous forms, however, known for its detached head that just flies around and attacks its prey. At a number 8 spot, we have Hitobashira. Hitobashira, also known as human pillars, is a custom of human sacrifice that was once practiced in Japan. It involved burying a victim alive under or near large-scale buildings such as dams, bridges, and castles. The practice was believed to appease the gods and protect the structure from natural disasters and enemy attacks. The tradition of human sacrifice in Japan dates back to the construction of aristocratic tombs in ancient times. The use of human pillars persisted in various parts of Japan until the 16th century. Legend has it that the Maruoka Castle, one of the oldest surviving castles in Japan, was built with the help of a human pillar named Oshizu. When the stone wall of the castle kept collapsing, a vassal suggested the use of a human sacrifice, Oshizu, who is this one-eyed woman living in poverty who volunteered to even become this human pillar in the first place. But she did this under one condition, and that one condition being that one of her sons was turned into a samurai. She was buried under the central pillar of the castle keep, and the construction was successfully completed. However, her son was not made a samurai, and thus her spirit has caused moat to overflow with spring rain every single year, and some people even report to see her ghost when they enter and visit this castle. As a result, people erected a small tomb to soothe her spirit, and a poem was even handed down about the rain caused by the tears of Oshizu's sorrow. It is speculated that the instability of the walls of the Maruoka Castle was due to the design of the castle in the first place, which is more indicative of earlier fortresses. On the other hand, the Matsu Castle is also rumored to have been constructed on human sacrifice, buried under the castle stone walls. The victim was a beautiful young maiden who was fond of dancing and is referred to as the Maiden of the Matsu. After the castle was built, a law was passed forbidding any girl to dance in the streets of Matsu because the hill Oshiruyama would shudder and the castle would shake from top to bottom. Although this practice has not been continued, it's just crazy to think that this was actually done, and some of the pillars in Japan actually contain real human sacrifice. At our number 7 spot, we had the Kisaragi station. In 2004, a 2chan user named Hasumi posted on a thread asking for help because she got on the wrong train at Shinhamatsu station. This was rather strange because she usually caught the same train after work, and trains in the station only go in one direction. She started getting really anxious because she remembered the stops only being a few minutes between each station, but on this specific train ride, they were just much longer. They even went through a tunnel, but her usual line didn't go through any sort of tunnel. She walked to the front car to ask the conductor for help, but the curtain was closed and no one answered. She then knocked on the door, but that's when the train suddenly stopped at Kisaragi station. As she left the train, she was filled with huge anxiety and fear, but as she tried to go back, the train door shut on her. As all this was happening, she was messaging people on this discussion board on 4chan about the station, but when they all replied, they had said that no such station existed in Japan. She decided to exit the station and walk back along the tracks, even back through the tunnel she had gone through under earlier. She reported strange sounds like drums in the distance, and even a voice telling her that walking on the tracks is extremely dangerous. As she grew more afraid, she turned back to go around, but she saw an old man with one leg, which then slowly disappeared right after. When she finally got out of the tunnel, a man came up offering help and to drive her to the nearest station. This is when she posted on the thread for the very last time, saying that the man was muttering to himself, then her phone died, and she was never heard from the thread again. At our number 6 spot with the 1932 Shirokiya department store. On December 16, 1932, tragedy struck the Shirokiya department store in Japan during their year-end Christmas theme sale. The festive decorations of the season turned into a nightmare as a fire broke out at the toy section just a few minutes before the store was about to open. The fire quickly spread to floors 4 and 8, filling the staircase with smoke and cutting off major escape routes. This left many shoppers and employees stranded on the upper floors, desperate for a way to find safety. Some of those who were trapped made makeshift ropes from clothing or curtains and climbed down to safety. Others were not so lucky. They instead fell to their deaths or even suffocated in the smoke-filled building. In total, 14 people lost their lives and 67 were injured in the Shirokiya department store fire. In the aftermath of the fire, stories and legends began to circulate about the tragedy. One particularly interesting legend relates to the traditional dress of the saleswomen in the store. At the time, it was customary for women who wore traditional kimonos to go without panties. According to this urban legend, some of the saleswomen in kimonos who were trapped on the upper floors chose not to jump the safety nets that had been set up below because they were just ashamed to not be seen below without underwear. While there is no real proof that this legend actually existed, it is said to have led on to an increase in the popularity of Western style panties in Japan, which is both odd and kind of terrifying at the same time. I don't know what to think. In the hub for our list, we have the ghost taxi passengers. After the devastating 3/11 earthquake and tsunami that hit the northeastern Japan coast, sightings of yurei or ghosts have increased drastically in cities like Ishinomaki in Miyagi Prefecture. As these spirits have not been properly put to rest, some may have not even been aware that they are dead and are often searching for a way home. As a result, taxi drivers all over this place have long been subject to ghostly encounters in the form of passengers trying to go home or to a very specific place. This has almost become a norm for taxi drivers around Japan to be asked if they had ever had a ghostly passenger before. Tohoku Gaon University conducted a study called the Awakened Spiritual Earthquake Studies that involved interviews with more than 100 Ishinomaki taxi drivers who had supernatural encounters. Many drivers reported picking up passengers who seemed to be wet or wearing winter coats in the summer, months after the disaster in the cold months of March. Most drivers reported running the meter and having to pay the fee for the vanished passenger. One particular driver reported a chilling story about a man in winter clothing whom he picked up in the summer who asked to be taken to an address that had been destroyed. The driver asked if he was sure that that was the address as it was just a vacant lot, to which the passenger replied by asking, "Am I dead?" Number 4, the Red Room Curse. The Red Room Curse is a Japanese urban legend that originated from an interactive Adobe Flash horror animation uploaded to GeoCities in the late 1990s. The legend tells the story of a pop-up ad that appears on the victim's computer screen, displaying a black text that reads, "Do you like?" on a red background. After trying to close the pop-up, it reappears with a new message that reads, "Do you like the Red Room?" before the screen just turns completely red, displaying a list of names of the Red Room victims. This is when the victim senses a mysterious presence behind them before losing consciousness and later being found dead in a room with blood-painted walls. The legend gained notoriety in 2004 when a 12-year-old schoolgirl was murdered by an 11-year-old classmate known as Girl A in Sasebo. It was reported that Girl A was a fan of the Red Room curse animation and had the video bookmarked on her computer at the time of her death. And of course, this incident led to widespread discussion and fear for this curse. Then in 2016, a short film titled The Red Room Curse was released and was inspired by this urban legend, of course. The film brings the legend to life and is sure to give anyone who watch it a chilling experience. So if you guys kind of want to know what this Red Room is about, watch this film because it'll give you all the insights. Number 3, the Ushi-Oni. The world of Japanese mythology is full of terrifying creatures, but none are quite as fearsome as the Ushi-Oni, also known as the Ox Demon. This class of monster is found near bodies of water and is known for its savage and cruel nature. Although there are different types of Ushi-Oni, they all share similar traits that make them unmistakable. Perhaps the most terrifying thing about these monsters is their insatiable appetite for human flesh. Then on top of that, they breathe toxic poison, making them even more deadly. The Ushi-Oni is not to be trifled with as well, and many people who have encountered one have not lived to tell the tale. It is worth mentioning that the Ushi-Oni is not always a solitary creature either. They are known to work together with other yokai or supernatural creatures such as the Nura-Onna and the Iso-Onna. These yokai use their charms to lure unsuspecting men towards the water, where the Ushi-Oni is waiting to pounce and make a meal of its victims. The appearance of the Ushi-Oni is quite unique and interesting as well. Much of them resemble an ox from the head up, but their body is a demonic horror. However, there are many variations on this theme, including one with a spider-like body, another one with a cat-like body, and even one with the body of a kimono-clad human. Pretty terrifying. Number 2, the cursed Kleenex commercial. In 1986, Kleenex released a commercial in Japan that sparked a series of disturbing urban legends. The ad featured a woman in white and an ogre-looking child sitting on a pile of hay and enjoying Kleenex tissues, all while singing the song "It's a Fine Day" by Jane and Barden played in the background. Almost instantly after the commercial was aired, TV stations and Kleenex corporate allegedly began receiving complaints about the ad, with many people finding unsettling. Some claim that the entire film crew met untimely deaths in freak accidents following this, while others said that the child in the commercial had passed away immediately after filming this. There are also rumors that the actress Kaiku Matsuzaka had either passed away or even been committed to a psychiatric hospital. Others claim that when the ad came on at night, the singer's voice in the commercial transformed from that of a young soprano to a raspy old woman's. And the ad was so unsettling to the public that Kleenex eventually pulled it off air and replaced it with a completely different one. At our number 1 spot, we have the Kaikoji Temple. This place has nothing really scary about it, except the fact that it has mummified bodies on display. Okay, maybe it's a bit scary. These mummified figures are known as the Shukumbutsu, also known as the living Buddha or Buddha mummies. These are in fact real people, and these are the bodies of the priests who belong to the Shingon sect of Japanese Buddhism. All these mummies we see are priests who made the drastic decision in self-mummification. And I don't know what it is, but there's something about a body that being fully intact for hundreds of years that makes it so creepy. The process for the mummification would actually be very intense as well, and for the first 1,000 days, and it would go a little something like this. For the first 1,000 days, they would do extreme fasting and exercising. Then on the next 1,000 days, they would reduce their diet to a bare minimum in order to fit in this thing. The last 1,000 days would consist of entombment. Basically, many would bury themselves alive, essentially while in a deep state of meditation in order to reach enlightenment.
Starting off at number 10, we have the ever popular Hell's Gate Bridge in Oxford, Alabama. This is no London Bridge, despite the fact that it is falling down, but a more sinister bridge that harbors the characteristics of a living hell. Hell's Gate Bridge got its name because it's said that when you stop on the bridge and glance over your shoulder, the road begins to resemble a fiery gates of hell. And if you're not scared from a mere opinion, in 1950, a young couple's car drove directly off the bridge, killing both of them. And it said if you stop at the bridge with your lights off, a member of the couple enter the vehicle and leave a wet spot on your seats. The bridge has now been cemented off due to its poor condition and to stop those who are too curious for their own liking. At number 9, we have the Alaskan Triangle. Imagine the Bermuda Triangle, but cold and on land, and then we have the Alaska Triangle. This is a piece of untouched wilderness where mystery lingers and the unknown spreads. This triangle connects from Alaska's largest city of Anchorage to Juneau in the southeast and Barrow in the north. Over the past 50 years, over 20,000 people and several planes have gone missing in the area. The mystery of the disappearance is inconclusive, but many of the surrounding indigenous tribes, including the Tling tribe, claim that restless demons and trickster spirits lure people to an icy death. Specifically, there is a shape-shifting demon called the Kushtaka, described to approach those who are lost or weak. And once your trust grows with them, they will drag you deeper into the wilderness and tear you limb for limb, preventing your soul from reincarnating. In other words, this place is not the most ideal backpacking spot. You can't believe what we have at number 8. We have the ghost of Stowe Lake. Situated by the largest body of water that borders the beloved Golden Gate Park in California, a young mother and her baby daughter decided to take a stroll and enjoy the scenery. Eventually, the mother would be distracted while speaking to another lady in the park. Due to this distraction, her baby daughter rolled away and ended up in the lake. Like any mother, she started to panic and jumped in the lake attempting to save her daughter. This was the last time the woman was seen. Now, there are reports of women sobbing when there's no one around. And if that wasn't eerie, some have even reported seeing this woman still looking for her baby in the water. And for a bad idea, you can summon her by saying, white lady, I have your baby," 3 times and she will appear. However, this is not recommended. At number 7, we have Charman. In 1948, in Ojai Valley, located in California, there was a large brush fire which destroyed the majority of the valley along with many homes around the area. This fire's devastation made it impossible for those in the affected area to receive any sort of help, which kick-started this urban legend. During the time of the fire, a man and his son who lived in an isolated cabin in the valley found themselves fighting for their own survival. Their house burned down, the father ended up dying from the fire, and the son acquired several deep burns on their skin. This drove the son completely insane, and with his enraged mindset, he hung his father and skinned all of the burned skin from his body. The son eventually disappeared in the darkness of the woods, and it is said that those who wander carelessly in Ojai Valley will encounter the horribly burned charred man, and he will attempt to tear their skin off, just as he did to his father. Coming in at number 6, we have the Dog Boy. Despite the lighthearted name, its story is truly traumatic. In a small Arkansas town was a child named Gerald Bettis, who was supported by 2 loving parents. However, this love would turn to sour. At a young age, Gerald would kidnap and torture dogs, giving him the name, and eventually would thirst for something more sinister. He would move on to humans, specifically his parents. He ended up torturing his parents by imprisoning them in their own home, keeping them there for years. Eventually, the father would pass away in the home, ending his tortured existence, and it's still believed that this house is still haunted from the spirit of Gerald and his father, with consistent light flickers, moving objects, and cold spots. Taking our number 5 spot, we have the Dark Watchers. The Santa Lucia Mountains, or the Santa Lucia Range, is a rugged mountain range located in the coastal area of Central California. For many years, people have looked up at these tall peaks and spotted tall, cloaked figures looking down at them, and in the blink of an eye, they're gone. These 7 to 15 feet tall mystical entities stand motionless, wearing only a black coat and a broad brim hat. Sightings were reported all the way back from the 1700s, when the Spanish had just arrived on the land and noticed these tall dark watchers on the mountain. Despite these entities not doing any physical harm, they're always watching people in the area, making them feel worried and scared of the feeling of not being alone. Here we have at number 4, the Hugging Molly. In Abbeville, Alabama, there is said to be a phantom-like 7-foot tall woman dressed in all black with a large brim hat. If you ever saw the Woman in Black movie, you could get the idea of what I mean. Legends say she will appear to children, squeeze them tight, and then scream in their ear. Other than this, she is said not to have harmed them. There are also tales of how she hugs some to death. Their intentions to hug is said to be from losing her only daughter and hugging her while she had already passed. Who knew a hug could be so bad? Stealing the number 3 spot, we have the infamous Skinwalker. In Arizona, there is a mythical creature which can shed its own skin, like how a snake sheds. Skinwalkers are humans who possess immense supernatural power, including the power to transform into any animal. According to the legend, these evil beings have the choice to choose any animal they desire, but their most common animal forms are a fox, goat, owl, coyote, cougar, dog, and a wolf. These supernatural beings are said to have started as medicine men who eventually used their powers for evil, turning them to something worse. It is said that powerful skinwalkers have the ability to steal the body of its victims by locking eyes with them. The skinwalker can control that person and become them at will. Once it controls you, it has complete control and has the power to make the victim do things they normally wouldn't do. Skinwalkers are a sign of those who decide to choose evil over good. At our number 2 spot, we have Homie the Clown. In Illinois during the 1990s, there was a clown going by the name of Homie, who would be spotted going through the streets to lure children in his sketchy van. If you ever saw the free candy van meme, this is the unofficial origin story. His name originated from the beloved clown character in the early 90s sketch comedy show named In Living Color, who was an ex-convict who would carry a sock for rebellious children. Except for this clown, children would not get a sock for punishment, but would get something more sinister, more brutal. Eventually, the police would be involved, but would be skeptical about a killer kidnapping clown. Homie the Clown would eventually fizzle out of existence and may still be out there in his van, awaiting unsuspecting children. Finally, at number 1, we have the Riverdale Road. Definitely not the teen drama show Riverdale. There's an 11-mile stretch of road located in Thornton, Colorado, with almost all forms of supernatural reported, from ghostly beings to talking animals to devil worshippers. Just off the road, there's a place called Joggers Hill, where it's said that a car hit a jogger and left him to die, which created a revengeful spirit that is reported to attack any of those who try to enjoy the scenery. On this road, there's also a Camaro that drives around at night with only one headlight on that attempts to race with you. However, this race will be to your death, as this black Camaro is the exact same one in the fatal 1970s car accident that was completely totaled. If this wasn't terrifying enough, the history of this road showed that many slaves were tortured and abused on the farms surrounding the road. And it is said that if you look close enough, you can see the bodies of the hanged slaves in the trees. So next time you take a night ride to relieve your stress, make sure the road you're on is not called Riverdale Road.
At our number 10 spot, we have the Phantom of the Opera. The Phantom of the Opera is a well-known legend that is closely linked to the history of the Opera Garnier in Paris. This legend originated from a fire that occurred in the Salle Palatier, the predecessor of the Opera Garnier, in 1873. A pianist named Ernest was horribly disfigured in the fire and lost his companion as a result. Overcome with grief, he chose to isolate himself from the world and even took refuge in the basement of this place, which was still under construction at the time. Ernest spent the remainder of his life in the shadows of this building and only ate fish from the underground lake of the opera. His sorrowful cries could be heard in the background of performances, as many guests would report. After his disappearance, strange events started to occur in the Opera Garnier. For example, a machinist was found hanged, but when they did investigation, there was no rope to be found. And also, a chandelier fell during one performance, killing a spectator seated in the seat number 13. All these mysterious occurrences were attributed to the Phantom of the Opera, who is believed to still haunt the halls of the famous theater. These mysteries have captured the imaginations of many writers, including Gaston Leroux. He wrote the novel The Phantom of the Opera in 1910, which is a worldwide success and largely based on this legend. Even today, the legend continues to live on, as Lodge number 5 in Opera Garnier is permanently rented by a mysterious stranger. This lodge is strategically located within the theater, allowing its occupant to see the performances but remain unseen. At our number 9 spot, with the Beast of Gévaudan. The Beast of Gévaudan remains one of the most intriguing and mysterious legends in French history. The terror caused by this man-eating beast, or beast, lasted for 3 years, from 1764 all the way to 1767. The attacks took place in the Margeride Mountains of south central France and spanned over an area of 90 by 80 kilometers. Eyewitnesses reported that the beast was formidable, with sharp teeth and an immense tail. The descriptions of the animal also varied widely, with some saying it was a striped hyena, while others claimed it was like a large wolf, dog, or even a wolf-dog hybrid. Regardless of its actual appearance, the Beast of Gévaudan was known for its brutal methods of attack, which often involved tearing out the throats of his victims. The Kingdom of France took threat to this beast very seriously and even devoted a significant amount of manpower and wealth to hunting this animal down. The resources of several nobles, soldiers, and royal huntsmen, and even civilians, were used in the pursuit of this beast. But despite their efforts, the attacks persisted and the number of victims continued to rise. The exact number of victims is not known, but estimates suggest that the beast killed and injured hundreds of people. Although the beast was reported killed several times, the attacks did not stop until 1767. To this day, the identity of the Beast of Gévaudan remains a mystery, and its legends continue to captivate people's imaginations, and if there was really a man-eating beast in France during this time. At a number 8 spot, we have the Father of Cinematography. Louis Le Prince is a name that should ring a bell to all those into cinema, as he is widely regarded as the true father of cinematography. However, despite his monumental contribution to the world of motion pictures, his name is often overshadowed by figures like Thomas Edison and the Lumiere brothers. The reason for this is that Le Prince disappeared before he could showcase his groundbreaking invention to the world. In 1888, Le Prince shot the first film in history in Leeds, England. However, instead of rushing to show the world what he created, he chose to be patient and refine his invention. After 2 years of careful tweaking, he was finally ready to present his work to the public. Then in September 1890, he boarded a train to Paris with all the materials and patents he needed for the showcase. But unfortunately, he never made it to the French capital. His friends were waiting in Paris to pick him up, but they found no trace of him. This mystery sparked many rumors and theories about what could have happened to Le Prince. Some people said that his brother Albert killed him over their inheritance, while others believed that he drowned himself or just decided to fled to start a new life. But the most tantalizing theory was that Thomas Edison himself was behind Le Prince's disappearance, as he wanted to ensure his monopoly over the invention of cinema. Despite the many theories surrounding his disappearance, one thing is for certain: Louis Le Prince left a lasting impact on the world of motion pictures and will forever be known, at least for me, as a visionary inventor. All the way at a number 7 spot, we have the murdered monks. The Abbaye de Mortemer is a 12th century monastery located in Normandy, France, and it is considered by many to be one of the most haunted places in the country as well. The story of Mortemer Abbey begins with the Cistercian monks who built the monastery on marshy land that was referred to as the Dead Pond, a name that would eventually become the moniker for the abbey itself. Despite the monastery's size and grandeur, it was often plagued by financial difficulties, which ultimately led to its downfall. By the time of the French Revolution, the abbey was in a state of disrepair, but a small community of monks still lived within its walls. However, their presence was not enough to save them from the wrath of the revolutionaries, who decided to storm the abbey in 1790, killing 4 monks who lived there and leaving a scene of blood and chaos behind. Since then, the abbey has been the site of numerous ghostly sightings, with rumors of ghostly monks haunting the ruins. Fortunately, there has even been accounts of a benevolent ghost there, dressed in the robes of a monk, appearing during World War II and even saving an English paratrooper from an enemy attack. And if you decide to visit, there's a higher chance you'll probably encounter one of the more angered spirits of the 4 murdered monks, but let's just hope you encounter this one. Number 6, the Mont Saint-Michel. The Mont Saint-Michel, a settlement located on the border of Brittany and Normandy, is a place of both beauty and terror. This majestic fortress built on an island is surrounded by the sea, which makes it a popular tourist destination, but this fairy tale-like location still has a dark and haunting side to it. According to the legend, the island was discovered when Saint Albert received a dream from Archangel Michael, directing him to build a monastery there. Despite initially disregarding the vision, the Archangel burned a hole in the bishop's head to reinforce the message, and the monastery was built. The island has been a place of worship and pilgrimage for centuries and has been the subject of many myths and ghost stories over the years as well. The island is known for their Battle of Mont Saint-Michel, one of the bloodiest days in French history. It is said that the wails of English soldiers who lost their lives during the war can still be heard on calm days with low tides. Many people believe that the souls of these soldiers are unable to rest and continue to haunt the island, never moving to the afterlife. Before the French Revolution, the island was inhabited by monks and other pious people who decided to bury their dead in the walls of the church. When the revolution reached Mont Saint-Michel, the monks were forced to abandon the island, and the abbey was then turned into a prison. Some say that the ghosts of the dead monks who were disturbed by the desecration of their once sacred location still roam the island as well. And the humper list, we have the Jack and Jill nursery rhyme. As you already know, nursery rhymes' origins aren't as charming as their true story. One of these is the Jack and Jill nursery rhyme. It has 2 popular interpretations. One is tied to the French Revolution, and the other one is tied to King Charles I of England. In the first interpretation, Jack represents King Louis XVI of France, and Jill represents Queen Mary Antoinette. The rhyme tells the story of their execution during the Reign of Terror in 1793. But in the second interpretation, the rhyme revolves around King Charles I's attempt to increase taxes on liquid measures. The standard volume of Jack was reduced and the tax remained the same. A gill, which was twice the volume of a Jack, was also reduced as a result. The volume mark on the standard Jack measure was indicated with a crown, and the reduction of the volume caused the crown mark to fall, leading to the lyrics, Jack fell down and broke his crown.
Jack and Jill went up the hill to fetch a pail of water. Jack fell down and broke his crown, and Jill came tumbling after.
Number 4, the worst barber ever. Travel back in time to medieval Paris and the Ile de la Cite. when a barber was known to frequently receive foreign students who were housed by neighboring canons. Unfortunately, some of these young students would then vanish without a trace. In those days of widespread poverty and frequent attacks, it was believed that these students were victims of a violent crime, and with no family left in Paris to inquire about their disappearance, their fate was left to speculation. However, one day, an unusual incident changed the course of events. A dog was barking loudly in front of a barber's door for several days, and its master, a German student, had not returned from his appointment. The police were then called in to investigate and made a shocking discovery. The barber was cutting the throats of his young clients, then disposing of their bodies through a trap door in the cellar of the pastry chef next door. It was said that the pastry chef used the bodies to make some of the best pies in all of Paris. The barber and pastry chef paid the price for their crimes, and they were burned alive in a public square. Their houses were razed to the ground, and today the former site of the bakery is used as a garage for the Paris police. Number 3, the haunted lighthouse at Tevennec. Despite its picturesque location on the coast, the Tevennec lighthouse was notorious for the tales of madness and death that surrounded the 23 lighthouse operators who lived and worked there before it was automated in 1910. The area around the lighthouse has a rich maritime history and was known for their frequent shipwrecks that occurred there, including the crash of the French ship Sedusant during the Napoleonic Wars, which led to the death of hundreds of sailors. According to local legends, the area is also haunted by the spirits of the Celtic seafarers and warriors, who has been said to haunt the lighthouse since its inception. The tales of madness that befell the lighthouse operators are particularly eerie. The first operator, Henry Guzenik, was reportedly driven to madness by ghostly voices that spoke to him in the Breton language and told him to leave the lighthouse every single day. One of these successors are said to have had a similar experiences, leading the French government to make Tevennec a two-man lighthouse and even recruited married couples to work there. However, few couples were willing to live and work at this lighthouse, for obvious reasons, and those that did suffered untimely and tragic deaths, including a family with 3 children and a cow.
Well, it's not relevant, is it?
The story surrounding the Tevennec lighthouse is filled with the tales of failed exorcisms, crucifixes installed to ward off evil spirits, and even a violent storm that arrived just as one of the operators were giving birth inside of the lighthouse. So definitely one of the places in France that you don't want to visit. Number 2, the encounter of Marius de Wilde. The French commune of Coralbo made headlines in September 10, 1954, when a local railway worker named Marius de Wilde claimed to have been visited by extraterrestrials. According to the reports, de Wilde claimed that a cigar-shaped UFO landed near his garden, and 2 small creatures in spacesuits resembling dive costumes emerged. The UFO shot a beam of light that paralyzed de Wilde, and by the time he was recovered, the aliens are already getting ready to leave. Despite an investigation by the authorities that found unusual marks on the railway tracks, there was no concrete evidence of an alien encounter. The stories of de Wilde's experience with the extraterrestrials quickly was widespread and reached the wine-producing village of Châteauneuf-du-Pape, located hundreds of miles from Coralbo. The local mayor and town council were keen to protect their citizens and vineyards from potential alien invaders, and as a result, they passed a municipal decree that banned all UFOs from landing, taking off, or flying over the community. Which is definitely strange, but I guess the UFOs listened, because ever since they made this decree, they haven't seen one since. Number 1, the ghost of Pont-Marie. The City of Love is also the city of spine-chilling ghost stories, one of which stems from the era of France during World War II. This period saw the division of France into 2 parts, one directly occupied by the Germans and the other being a puppet state by them. However, amidst the hardship and turmoil, a brave woman rose to the occasion and joined the French resistance. This Parisian lady was married to a resistance fighter and was tasked with collecting information from an SS officer, with whom she started an affair. One fateful winter night, she was scheduled to meet her husband on Pont-Marie Bridge, which spans across the River Seine, but he ended up never arriving. Understanding that something was amiss, the woman wept, waiting through the night until she eventually froze to death. Ever since, reports have surfaced of her ghost appearing on cold nights on this bridge, still crying and waiting for her husband to show up.
In our list, right at number 10, we have mysterious origins. I think it's best to introduce this doll by sharing its disturbing origins. According to legend, in the early 1900s, a wealthy American family known as the Ottos committed an unspeakable offense against their young maid from the Bahamas. In an act of retaliation, the maid gifted the young Otto boy Eugene a dog named Robert who had been cursed by a voodoo priestess. In the following years, Eugene would be uncomfortably close to the doll. He would speak to it as if it was a real person and would become violently angry with anyone who just looked at it without his permission. Looking without permission meant that they were being disrespectful to Robert,
And on top of that, most of the Otto family friends stopped visiting, claiming to have seen the doll move by itself or having heard it giggle and laugh in the dead of night. The family had enough and decided to send the doll to a museum where many people believe that visiting the doll is a reason for their personal tragedies. And it's to be noted that you should not view it without his permission or take any photos, or else misfortune will find you. At our number 9 spot, we have it's the same company that invented the teddy bear. As mentioned before, he was a handmade doll, but many don't know that Robert was built in the same company that created the first ever teddy bear, showing that evil and good can exist in the same place. But this kind of makes me think of teddy bears differently, especially when the company that made the teddy bear was also one who made one of the most cursed objects in the world. The company's name is Steve Company, which was located in Germany. They created the teddy bear in honor of Theodore Roosevelt, but for Robert, they didn't intend to release him at all, and said he was a part of a window display of clown and gestures. Well, I guess the joke's on us. Stealing our number 8 spot, we have Robert is possessed. So it's widely believed that the doll is in fact possessed. They place the blame on the person who originally gave the doll to Eugene Otto, which was the servant who worked for the family. It's reported that she was abused and mistreated by the family, which led her to cursing the doll using voodoo and black magic. The doll would consume Eugene and would often be caught talking and painting with the doll until his death in 1974. The doll seemed to be possessed before his death, but after, it only got worse. And that's where we'll get onto our next point. Onto our next point, at number 7, we have Myrtle Reuter. When Eugene Otto died in 1974, his doll and the house were the only things that he left behind. So eventually the artist's house was purchased by Myrtle Reuter, who was also granted the task to take care of Robert the doll. In addition to sourceless footsteps and giggling, Reuter and her visitors reported seeing Robert's facial expressions change whenever his owner Gene was mentioned. They also swore he had the ability to move between different rooms of the house without any help. And her 10-year-old daughter would find Robert in the attic where she claimed he was alive and trying to hurt her. After 20 years, she had enough and finally decided to donate Robert to the Fort East Martello Museum in Key West, Florida, where he still resides today. On to our next point, at number 6, we have Fort East Martello Museum. Now the doll haunts a small museum in Key West, Florida. It now haunts the entire building, and it's said that school children walking by outside report seeing Robert move from window to window. Staff at the museum claim that Robert has been found in different positions within his case. That footsteps have been heard around the museum at night with no apparent explanation for the noise, and that Robert's expression has been known to change from neutral to nasty in a blink of an eye. Visitors in the museum take precaution before meeting Robert. It's said that you need to speak to him in a polite way. You need to ask his permission to photograph him and to treat him with the utmost respect. The walls around him are littered with apologies from guests for their behavior. That's literally how much people fear his ability to curse others. This is because many visitors who don't respect Robert claim they face dreadful misfortune, such as getting into accidents, losing relationship, illnesses and disease. So these apologies are actually for good reason. Right in the hump of our list, we have Don't Get Robert Mad. Now that we mentioned that he's currently in the Fort East Martello Museum, I think it's best to know that his terror didn't stop there. It only continued at a grander scale. One Reddit user named Dun Myth was with his wife and son when they decided to take a trip to Key West. They had heard about Robert in the past, so just because they were passing through, it just made sense to take a visit. The man's wife was superstitious and was very nervous when approaching Robert. On the other hand, the man was not nice about it and decided to tease her about it, which in hindsight, he knew that he pissed Robert off. Once they finished, and as they were leaving, they noticed that their car wouldn't start. It's also good to mention that this car was a luxury car, bought new, and was less than a year old. But when the mechanic came, the battery connectors just crumbled because they were that corroded. The mechanic claimed he had never seen anything that bad. This led the husband to walk back to the museum to apologize to Robert. I know, creepy stuff. All the way at our number 4 spot, we have Robert moving his foot. A lot of people decide to record Robert as they visit the museum. Many don't really record anything supernatural, and besides, they are usually stressed because of the conditions needed to visit Robert. As mentioned already, you need to ask permission to take pictures or videos or even talk to the doll. If not, people claim bad luck and negativity in their lives. So here's a video of someone showing Robert the doll. Although it's unconfirmed if they ask for permission, it's super eerie the way Robert just moves. Right at our number 3 spot, we have Robert inflicts pain.
Just one more museum encounter for our list, I promise. Reddit user Taiji Lu talked about his tragic encounter with Robert the doll. He was super excited to see the doll. A kid in the candy shop is how he described it. He reported feeling heavy the moment he was in the same room as Robert, and he even claimed to see apparitions in the corner of his eyes. The user took a photo of Robert, and once he started to tell the story to one of his friends, the atmosphere changed and he felt sick to the stomach. As they rode back home on their bikes, the kid would fall off and dislocate his knee, and to this day, he would still blame it on Robert the doll. We're almost done, and at our number 2 spot, we have Ozzy Osbourne. I know it's a bit random, but I wasn't surprised that Ozzy Osbourne had a connection to this cursed doll. Just in case you've been living under a rock, Ozzy Osbourne took over the 70s with his heavy metal vocals and personality. In this series, Ozzy and Jack's World Detour, they decided to pay a visit to the doll. During the visit, Ozzy and his son did apologize and ask for permission, but the doll just didn't seem fazed.
Do you believe in that voodoo?
I think that's some weird
superstition.
After this occasion, Ozzy had a terrible 2019. He took many serious falls, causing many major bruises and cuts. He underwent neck surgery, he got an infection in his hand, and was hospitalized for a flu. He blamed all of this on the cursed doll.
Sorry, Robert.
Sorry, pardon.
So if Ozzy Osbourne speaks, we listen. At our number 1 spot of our list, we have an inspiration from Chucky. One of the most influential horror films of all time is 1980's Child's Play. This starred the infamous killer doll Chucky. Even though he isn't a real person, he is based on a real figure. And you guessed it, it's Robert the doll. These stories have very many similarities. Like Robert, Chucky was a gift to a little boy who at first saw Chucky as his best friend and primary companion. Chucky's tale also parallels Robert's because they are both living dolls who cause chaos wherever they go. Both these dolls are just entities of mischievous deeds.